The Terranadome Returns, sponsored by Prize Picks. If you want to get ripped off and not receive your winnings, make sure you head on over to Prize Picks for all your daily fantasy sports needs. Yes, folks, unfortunately, that's a true story about Prize Picks. If you want to contact me privately, I can get into that, but I can tell you that I will never recommend Prize Picks daily fantasy to anybody moving forward. Welcome into the show, folks. My name, of course, is Scott Terrana. This is the Terranadome Returns, our second episode back after a long 2-year hiatus. Oh, that's good. My cat's going to jump in the window right during my introduction. That's great. Thanks a lot, man. Anyway, folks, since we last spoke, we've had another series begin, and we've had one series end, of course, as the Boston Bruins, as I predicted, and as many others predicted as well. They were knocked off and eliminated by the Florida Panthers last Friday night, going down in that series 4-2. And, of course, the Boston Celtics started their series with the Indiana Pacers with a thrilling Game 1 victory, 133-128 in overtime. And that's where we're going to begin today. So the Boston Celtics kind of tried to give that thing away a little bit on Tuesday night. And maybe, just maybe, perhaps, maybe they underestimated their opponent a little bit. But by the time it got down to crunch time there in the fourth quarter, it took Jaylen Brown hitting an insane video game type of shot, falling out of bounds, having to launch the ball over the defender's head, over his outstretched arms, falling into the stands, corner 3 from the left side. Bang! That ball drops. Game tied at 117. By the way, that was the only three-pointer that Jaylen Brown made in that game. Can you believe that? I didn't. But, I mean, I did watch it, so I guess there's that. Now, Jason Tatum, I heard them trying to trash Jason Tatum on the radio again yesterday. You can probably figure out which station it was. That guy had 36 points. He shot 12 of 26 in the game. 12 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals. Only 2 out of 7 in the fourth quarter, but took the game over in overtime. Tatum in overtime, 10 points and 5 out of 5 from the free throw line. Now, if we could go back a little bit, and I'm starting to think this one's going to be brief already today, folks, but just going back to the first half of this game, I mean, it was tied at 64 at halftime, and I'm a little bit out of order in my notes here because, you want to make sure you got this stuff right for the folks that are listening. But here's how it started. The Celtics opened up this game on a 12-0 run, okay? And by the end of the first quarter, the Pacers had it back to 34-31. They only trailed by 3. Celtics then, as I mentioned again, tie game at 64. Celtics go on a 16-2 run in the middle of the third quarter. Again, they pull away by this time 13. They're up 90-77 with just 4:15 left of that period. But then what happens? They fall asleep. Foot comes off the gas again. Indiana comes on their own 16-4 run to end that quarter. Okay? So now, with 1:57 to go, the Celtics find themselves trailing by 5. And Jaylen Brown saves you bacon at the end with a otherworldly shot that, I'll be honest with you, probably has about a 10-15% chance of falling anytime you throw up a shot like that. Epic for the highlight reel, but you really shouldn't have put yourself in that position to begin with. I think the Celtics underestimate this team, and that's going to be a problem for them moving forward if they do not get Porzingis back, but more on that in a bit. Pacers had 20-plus points from Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, and Tyrese Haliburton. It was a dominant first half for Miles Turner. He had 18, while Jaylen Brown led the way for the Celtics with 14 points on 7 out of 12 shooting. Siakam then took over in the second half for Indiana. 16 points, 6 rebounds, 8 out of 14 from the floor. And meanwhile, for the Celtics, Tatum and Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday, another unheralded big game in these playoffs for the Celtics. And no one's really talking about the impact that Holiday's had here, but especially with Porzingis out, Holiday has picked up a lot of the offensive output that has been missing from Porzingis. Tatum and Holiday keep the Celtics in it. Thanks again with the cat. You're going to be like my sidekick on this show. Okay. Tatum and Holiday, 33 of the team's 53 points in the second half. That's pretty good, but also where were the other 6 guys? Because it was only an 8-man rotation for both teams. We'll get to the benches a little bit later as well. I want to remind everybody out there that yes, while this was a nail-biter and we're not used to that with this Celtics team and everything else, let's keep in mind the degree of opponent here so far in the playoffs. First round, you had a Miami team that was missing Jimmy Butler, and honestly, not that deep of a team, even if Jimmy Butler was out there. A team you should get past, but then again, that is a team that beat you last year. Granted, you've gotten better since last year, so what's my point? I don't know, but Miami was banged up. You got by them 4-1. Second round, Cleveland, a little less banged up, but in the end, they never had their starting center who averages a double-double a game, Jared Allen. And the last 2 games of that series, they didn't have their best player and a guy that's an all-NBA level player in Donovan Mitchell. And that was definitely the difference in that series as well. Cleveland, a deeper team than Miami, but still not enough of a test for the Celtics team. This Celtics team has not really been tested at all this season. Sure, you've had some of those one-off games. You play every team twice a year minimum. You know, if they're in the Western Conference, you still play them twice a year. So, yeah, it certainly looked like the Denver Nuggets were going to be a big problem for the Celtics. Well, they're not in it anymore. They're gone. So, this is the first time in quite some time that the Celtics are being tested. And if they aren't careful, this is an Indiana team that, if the Celtics really let up and really lose focus, Indiana can beat them in this series. Indiana's a good team. They're deep. They're not even at full health themselves either, but they've got a better bench than you right now. I will tell you that. They have a better bench than you do right now because you are missing a very key piece. More on that in a minute. But their bench is better than yours right now. Andrew Nembhard, Obi Toppin, and TJ McConnell, all legit this year. McConnell, a good distributor. The other 2 good defenders, and they're all averaging around 10 points a game for the season. And again, no Porzingis for you. Well, it turns out that today, an SI.com article by Tony East, somebody let me know if he's legit, but I'm running with it. Porzingis could return as soon as Game 4. Oh, that soon, huh? Yeah, well, it's clear that the Celtics are handling this guy with kid gloves because, let's face it, this guy had a calf strain. And if he does come back, Game 4 is on Monday night in Indiana. Well, that would be exactly a month for an injury that should last anywhere from 17 to 21 days. But what do I know? I'm not 7'4", far from it. It will be exactly a full month. If Porzingis can make a gap back for Game 4, I think if he can get out there for Game 4 and he's 100% and they're confident in that they need to do that. Because in my opinion, the Celtics will be up 2-1 in the series by then. I feel they will be up by 2-1 in the series by then. But Indiana's got to be coming off a win that last game before Porzingis were to return. I expect Indiana to win Game 3 on Saturday night, which, you know, that brings me to my prediction for Game 2. But let's give Indiana credit where credit is due. They're very good, and if they're all going at once, they're damn hard to beat. Their top 3 are excellent. Tyrese Halliburton is an emerging superstar in the league. He was already voted to the team's NBA All-Third Team this year, which basically means he was a top 15 player in the league, according to his peers and the GMs that voted. They also brought over a guy named Pascal Siakam in a trade at the deadline this year, and that guy has won a championship before, and the leadership that he's brought over there is clearly showing. And now that he's thriving down low, the other 7-footer that they have, Miles Turner, has been able to step out and play and absolutely thrash as a big guy that can play the perimeter, knock down threes, and cause a lot of problems for team defenses. And I also mentioned those bench pieces earlier, right? Don't forget about old friend Aaron Nesmith. You Celtics fans out there know who I'm talking about. Aaron Nesmith was a first-round pick, a Danny Ainge darling, if you will. Nesmith never did anything offensively with the Celtics, but was always praised for his lockdown defense. And that is what he is doing right now. And also, he's had a pretty good offensive season for the Pacers as well, because he's averaging 12.2 points a game, easily a career high. Now, going into Game 2, which is tonight, by the way, please feel free to listen to the rest of this little podcast here. It won't be too much longer. And then you can go ahead and flip over the pregame festivities, and you can watch, the NBA on TNT, the TNT Insiders. Apparently next year is going to be their last year, which is kind of sad, really, I think. If anything, just because of Shaq and Charles Barkley busting each other's balls the whole time. But that's neither here nor there for this sake of discussion. Anyway, the Celtics have not won a Game 2 yet in this postseason. I think that changes tonight. Indiana pretty much gave you their absolute best in Game 1. This is a team the Celtics know they can't fool around with. Indiana's also playing with house money because no one expects them to win this series. And of course, that's always dangerous when all the pressure's on you. But as a team that had 64 wins in the regular season, you should be fine with that. No one expects Indiana to win this series. I'm probably arguing against myself at this point. The Celtics don't have any desire to go into Indiana tied at 1 game apiece. I expect Boston to come out and win tonight, possibly big, and then they're going to go on the road in Game 3 and they're going to lose because Indiana's too good of a team, but get swept. They're not going to lose in front of that home crowd. It's a really good atmosphere over there if you want to make the trip out to Indianapolis to watch a basketball game. Maybe you want to do that. I don't know. I don't, but maybe you do. What I was encouraged by in Game 1, and it's something that I think the Celtics can easily replicate, they got to the free throw line for 30 attempts in Game 1. Granted, they still took 45 three-point shots. That's insane to me. I will never, I can't get around jacking up 45, 50 plus three-point shots, and it's just not real basketball, man. But I sound like an old timer when I say this. I'm only in my early 30s, and I miss the triangle offense, man. Can we get that back? But anyway, if the Celtics do something similar to that tonight, they should lead Boston up 2-0. And of course, Indiana defends the perimeter well. It's something that Aaron Nesmith specializes in. Just as I mentioned, Nesmith, good defender. Indiana has good defenders. You have better skill players, even without Porzingis. Go take a 2-0 series lead. Don't sleep like you've done the last 2 series, because you don't want to do that to a team like the Pacers. Game 2 is tonight. I am looking forward to it. And now we're going to move to another team that was in the playoffs, but no longer is, and that'll be your Boston Bruins. And the rest of this is going to move fairly quickly, folks. I don't... It's a Bruins memorial. At the same time, I don't think anybody... You want to feel bad. You want to get upset or heartbroken or whatever over losing playoff hockey. But the bottom line is that this team was never a cup contender, okay? 109 points in the regular season, tied for the 6th most in the league. That's cute and everything. But how did they really get it done? Well, it was their defense and their goaltending. And I gotta tell you, when you get in the playoffs, that stuff only gets you so far, because you are going to run into teams that have high-powered offenses that can beat your defense and do just enough to score a little bit more to beat you. And that's exactly what happened here with the Bruins. So we should commend them on getting a 13-game playoff run in and actually winning a round, when you consider, although it was the Maple Leafs who have won 1 playoff round themselves since 2004. Unbelievable. But that Bruins team, Bridgie, I know I said a lot of this last week. I apologize if I'm repeating myself. It's Bridgie, and I'm going to tell you a few things that, unfortunately, are probably leading to a similar type of scenario for next season. First of all, they had their exit press conference for the season with the media. They had it yesterday, and Don Sweeney basically said they're going to try and trade Allmark again. He said, of course, I'd love to have the goalie tandem, but people are going to call me and I'm going to call them. And maybe this time Linus will be open to leaving because Linus is never going to be the number one goaltender here. That's what he didn't say. Yes, I'd love to have the tandem, but we're also going to pay Jeremy Swayman. That is clear. If you watched any of this playoff run other than game 1 against the Panthers? No, game 2 against the Panthers. Any other game during this playoff run, and you're like, that's who needs to be in net when it counts. You're paying Allmark $5 million a year. If this were baseball, that'd be chump change. But in the NHL, that is, let's see, their cap is right now is $77 million. Yeah, that's like 8% of your cap on one guy. So Allmark is signed for 2 more seasons at $5 million per. He just won a Vezina Trophy. You're not going to get back a superstar in return, but you can get something. You can get draft capital, which you desperately need now. Linus Allmark's got to go. I've been saying it since the middle of the year. They almost traded him, and I wish they had. I like Allmark. I like Allmark. Hey, Steve Davis, I know you love Allmark because every single game day during the Florida series, maybe even during the Leafs series too. Gotta start Allmark. Gotta start Allmark. I don't know when the guy's busting my chops and when he's telling me the truth, but he's a staunch Allmark defender. Allmark's gonna be gone because you're not paying. You cannot tie up that much of your cap to 2 goaltenders. You have kids in Providence that can be a backup. Swayman can play 57 to 60 games a year, and he'll be fine because Swayman's only 26 himself, I believe, going into next year. Maybe he's 27. You got to lock that guy up. We'll get to that in a second. The other real question for the Bruins, does Jake DeBrusk stay? And I guess fans out there, do you want him to stay? And what does he get paid on the open market if he doesn't? I personally don't really care much for DeBrusk, and I never have. And he seems like the kind of guy that's got so much more ability and is so much more capable than what he produces. And I think it's all between the ears with this kid. And I always have. I always have. He was part of the little cry fest that got Bruce Cassidy blown out of Boston at the end of 2 seasons ago. DeBrusk has had 1 season where I believe he scored 27 goals. I don't know what the numbers were this year. I know he was probably your best forward in the playoffs this year. That's a fluke. That is a fluke. What do you really want to pay Jake DeBrusk? If I'm the Bruins, you want to put him in a middle 6 role. You think he's a top 2 line guy. I think he's a seconder. He's a second line guy at best. Okay. If you want to throw him, let's call it 4 years, $4.5 million a year, which is 18 total. I can live with that. Okay. I can live with that. But do I think there might be a team out there that's in desperate need of a scoring wing that can do a little bit of stuff in front of the net and have a little bit of presence, and definitely a guy that can skate when he feels like it? I think that DeBrusk gets more on the open market because the Bruins know what he is, and I'm not sure that other teams do. So I think DeBrusk is gone, believe it or not. I can't believe I'm saying this, but there's going to be a market for Jake DeBrusk after all these years. I think DeBrusk is gone. So the situation for the Bruins as far as cap space is concerned, it's not great. It's a little bit better than this. It's better than it was last offseason. Still not great because you are considering you must sign a franchise goalie who is right there, right in front of you. They're only going to have $10.5 million of cap space. So let's do the math, right? And by the way, for the Bruins in the draft, no draft picks in rounds 1, 2, or 3. That doesn't help. They have $10.5 million of cap space available to them for next year. If you're going to sign Swayman as a franchise goaltender, I'd like it if you could sign him to 7 or 8 years at $8 million per. I think he would take that. I think he wants to be here. And I think it's pretty fair value, too. Because he's really only had 2.5 full seasons as a NHL goalie and 1 playoff run. So, if you give Swayman $8 million of that 10.5 of cap space, and that's not the only spot you have to fill, it doesn't leave you much for DeBrusk if you do want to sign him back. And it means you have to trade Ullmark. Period. Let me know what you think of that one in the comments below. Everybody on YouTube, that's where we're getting real big numbers on YouTube. I don't know if you noticed that. Incredible numbers. Very huge. Very huge, let me tell you. If they do not trade Ullmark, expect another Bridgie type year like last year. But just know that, and just remember this, just one more thing on Swayman. Remember, at the trade deadline, when teams called about Jeremy Swayman, the reports were that Don Sweeney hung up the phone. So Swayman is definitely here. If you don't trade Ullmark and you still have a tandem, and now you've got, let's say, 12 to 13 million, like the reporter threw out at Sweeney yesterday, 10 to 13 million of cap space tied up in 2 goalies, you are looking at exactly the same type of year that you had this year. As I mentioned earlier in this segment and also last week, 109 points for the season would not suggest it was a bridge year. But if you look at the scoring output of their roster outside of Pastrnak, you will see what I mean. And by the way, just so you guys know, if you didn't hear this, I'll tell you now. Bruins chairman Charlie Jacobs announced that President Cam Neely, GM Don Sweeney, and head coach Jim Montgomery, Monty, are all returning next season. Not that this should surprise anybody. So there's your Bruins minute. We'll see them in August and September. And, of course, if anything comes down with signings or anything like that, we will be sure to discuss it on this program. So, I don't have a lot of time left, and neither do you. So we are going to quickly talk about the Red Sox, and then I'm going to tell people to pound sand analyzing OTAs for the Patriots. And then we're going to be done, because you've got a game to watch tonight, and so do I. So here we go. The Boston Red Sox, they have been a nice surprise. They've been a nice surprise, depending on how you look at it. But nobody expected them to be above 500 after 50 games. I certainly didn't. Even the most optimistic of fans probably didn't. I'm conflicted on this. Ultimately, they're not very exciting to watch, but they are interesting. And ultimately, I don't think they have the depth to finish the season above 500. But again, I'm conflicted because 26 and 24 is an overachievement, but not for this market and not for this franchise. So let's pump the brakes on being really excited about it. Let's just go with that. How about the good stuff so far? Pitching staff has been excellent, pretty much out of nowhere, too. It really has been the development of the season for the Red Sox. A 2.99 team ERA through 50 games. New pitching coach and former Red Sox closer Andrew Bailey is a wizard. He has got these kids throwing different pitch mixes. There we go. And it's leading to a lot of success. No bigger example of that than Tanner Houck, your 2017 first-round pick for the Red Sox, who could not go more than 5 innings, pretty much without exception. For the first few years, they tried him as a starter. And they always said, well, if he could just figure out how to, get himself an extra offering, an extra pitch, something else that he can use. Well, he found something. He's tapped into his unfilled potential this year, folks. A 1.94 ERA in 10 starts and the 2.21 FIP, which is field independent pitching. Let me try that again. A 2.21 FIP tells you that 194 ERA is for real. He's also thrown the first shutout by a Sox starter at Fenway since 2017. Cute little nugget. By the way, not far behind Houck is another guy that nobody saw doing what he's doing right now, and that's Cutter Crawford, a 2.17 ERA. Pitching has been the highlight. I'm not sold on most of the bullpen. I cannot stand Kenley Jansen. But anyway, there's your surprises for the pitching staff. Offensively, it's much less impressive, as you might imagine. A 243 team average with a 721 team OPS. But there have been some bright spots. For example, Rafael Devers, a home run in 6 straight games over the past week. That's a new team record. That just happened. Devers is locked in at the plate. He looks the best I have ever seen him look in his career. That's a positive development. Tyler O'Neill, guy you got from St. Louis for pretty much nothing. He's hit a wall, but he leads the team with 11 home runs, although I would say 8 of them probably came in the first 3 weeks, but still, he's hit a wall, but I expect him to rebound. We'll see. And then you've had a couple of nice surprises. First of all, Wilyer Abreu. Wasn't high on anyone's prospect list. Doesn't have a great minor league profile. But yet that kid can hit. Gamer can clearly hit. 275, 842 OPS, 5 home runs. And Connor Wong, you may remember him as the guy that was the throw-in at the end of the Mookie Betts trade. Well, he's still around. He's currently sporting a 344 average, 882 OPS, and 5 home runs of his own in 144 at-bats. Those have been the nice surprises so far for the Red Sox lineup. Tristan Cassis, who I think is your next stud bat to sit right in the order there with Devers, he remains out for the foreseeable future with a cracked rib. But listen, a 26-24 start does not take this ownership group off the hook. They don't care. They don't care about winning. All they care about is the bottom line. So just keep that in mind. I say that as I'm probably going to be going to 2 games this summer, which I'm not proud of myself for, but I blame Nate Lynch for that. It's your fault, Nate. It's just your fault, okay? So, there's your Red Sox take. And about the Patriots, it's friggin' May. They had minicamp, organized team activities, voluntary ones. Stop complaining about who's getting the quarterback reps. You already know Drake May's not the starter. I turn on the big channel on Tuesday. There's literally a Celtics playoff game that night. And the first thing they're doing is, why is Bailey Zappi taking the second team reps? Why is he ahead of Drake May? He's a bum. He's not going to be here. Drake May needs that experience. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. If it's still happening in 2 months when you actually get to training camp, then we have something to say. My name is Scott. Thank you for tuning in to the second episode of the Terranadome Returns. And our next episode will be on Monday ahead of Celtics Game 4. Make sure you don't miss that. You can catch us and download us and you can stream us at any of your whatever avenue you want your podcast from. We're pretty much on them at this point. It's the Terranadome Returns. I thank you for listening and thank you for checking in. Thank you for the support, and we will see you on Monday. Have a good evening, everyone.